Go.
Okay. So I'll start off by discussing the ways in which where I've employed various sources of power. As a leader, I'm a field trainer for newly hired employees, where I evaluate them daily for a period of 1 month. All field trainers must have a minimum of 2 years on the job. They go through a training process in order to be certified as a trainer. That's where I get my expert power, even though I don't, necessarily consider myself an expert. But and that information that's known by the employees, and therefore the power is based on me and not necessarily the position. The second type of power in that role comes from being a field trainer, that new employees go along with my decision based on that month they are with me, and I am their immediate boss. So they may not agree with some of the tasks that they have to do, but in order to move on, um, um, they have to go along with it. So that's where the power is based on my position and not necessarily on me, and that's my legitimate power. I think that finally the most influential power I have as a trainer is my reward power. Because I evaluate them and document their performance daily, I have the ability to reward them with positive comments and an acceptable performance rating, and this allows them to move on from training into a solo capacity where they're no longer needed to be in a training as a training officer. And that's where both the tangible and intangible rewards are obtained from me. So those are probably the three that I currently I'm actually training this month. So that was the first thing that came to mind when I was reading that.
Okay, great. In the book, my highest power was my referent power, even though I expressed multiple different types of power. I was a regional training manager for a large restaurant chain. And for that, I used my expert power. I have opened 14 stores around the US, and I trained different positions. So that way, from the front of the house to the back of the house, I used my knowledge as power as the expert power, and just teaching them and coaching them on a daily basis. So far as spec size, recipes, serving training, bar training, drink recipes. My role as a restaurant manager, I used two types of power, such as reward power. One way to drive sales into the restaurant is holding sales contest for our servers, giving them an incentive to increase their check averages, increase their sales, whether it be a $100 gift card at the end of the quarter of who increases their check averages most, or a daily shift based on who can sell the most specials in a day will get a free meal at the end of the shift. Referent power I use on a daily basis, and that was my highest score in the survey, is I like to model my own behavior. I genuinely care about the employees, and I treat them as family. Being there 60 hours a week or more, that's like my second home, and I think of all of the employees as my family, so it's always caring about them. And some of them have followed me throughout the years in my different restaurants. So it's always, I can ask them for, hey, I need a favor. Can you come in tonight and work this shift? Somebody just called out. So they're more willing that they are to come in and help me when I need help. Referent power.
Sounds good.
For me, I'm not in a position like a management position or anything, but I have been doing my job for almost 2-3 years now. So I kind of use like expert power just when dealing with like my coworkers, because I know what's going on. A lot of people come to me for answers if they need help with something. If they don't know the answer to something, they come to me first. So I kind of have to use a little bit of my expert power just to help them out, not to be like, a know-it-all or anything, but it's like if somebody's more knowledgeable about something, then you want to go to them. And that's same thing. The referent power kind of goes along with the expert power as far as I set a good example for others. I try to work hard. I'm also in the restaurant industry, so it's like the harder I work, the more money I make. At least that's the general idea. So I try to be a good role model for others, and that helps me also, keep on task and working hard. So I'd say those two are my two types of power that I use the most, at least at work, especially.
Yeah, I think referent power can definitely be used in both business life and personal life, just because it makes you more approachable, and that's really important, especially in the workplace. I've never really held a top leadership or management position, but I think referent power can really be used by people who are just veterans in a job. I've held a job for a few years, and I was never really in a leadership position, but like Andy said, when you have that expert power and that referent power, you're more approachable, so people can come to you and ask you questions, because there are a lot of people who are afraid to go to the big boss or afraid to go to the big leader. So referent power definitely, it's nice to have, even if you're not a leader. And that was what I scored highest on the case study. And then as a follower, my leaders use reward power, and at Home Depot, when I used to work there, my leaders used reward power for the cashiers for incentives to get more credit cards. They would have luncheons for all the cashiers if we recovered merchandise. But like our book states, those tangible incentives need to be desirable. If it's, I remember one time, I'm a Packers fan, and living in Washington, everybody is a Seahawk fan. So they had, one of the incentives was a Seahawks jersey. So reward power kind of didn't really work well on that specific time, because I'm not a Seahawks fan, so the jersey didn't really, motivate me to do the best. But
Yeah, just to add on to that, my managers use a lot of reward power too, just to boost, like the book says, like short-term performance.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a lot of employees are only there 15, 20 hours a week, so it's like you just want them working hard, and if they're working for something even more, then it would just help them work a little bit harder.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Reward power is a great motivation for some. Again, it doesn't work for all, because, like you said, that reward is not always appealing to everybody. So it's trying to find what appeals to the most and what works to the most, and motivating people in different ways. So great job. As for cultural experience, for me, being in the restaurant industry as a manager, leaders tend to be more of a male role. As female managers, it almost feels like that there's a glass ceiling that we hit. Mainly, if you look in different various restaurants, all the directors, CEOs, senior management, there's mainly males. It is definitely hard for a female to come into the restaurant role or be a restaurant leader. So in those approaches, it's tough for a woman to come in, and you have to act a little bit differently. You have to display yourself as a more strong-willed, more commanding in those types of situations. They tend to view female managers as a little bit more weak, because it is definitely a challenging role, working in those long hours, putting in hard work, and it's just a more physical type of demand that they tend to see female managers as the weaker of the two. So it's always important for female managers in this industry to display some side of that confidence, that commanding power, to rise to the top.
I'll switch a little bit to where when you're talking about as far as the culture there is, it's not no, necessarily written. It's just the way I guess that industry has turned out to be where it's male dominated. I was in the Marine Corps, and it was almost the polar opposite, where it really didn't have to do with sex. It was mainly just rank. And so in the military, I was in, like, I think I said it was the Marine Corps. There was extreme high power distance just based on rank. If you were, higher rank, you were the rank demanded respect, and it was expected that you gave that respect, whether you agreed with that person's abilities or what the case was. And the inequality of that culture was um, one of the items were like base housing. If you had a higher rank, the housing that you received was significantly better than those that were at a lower rank within the enlisted officers. When it came to commissioned officers, a commissioned officer with 1 year had more power and more status than, let's say, an enlisted officer with 15 years. So their legitimate power was very unequal, but that's just the way the military is, and that's just something that going in you have to understand and live with.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things for like some leaders is like dealing with the cultural differences. It's like high context culture versus the low context, where like high context is more like nonverbal. You don't have to like say everything to get the message across. Whereas low context, it's like you're going to directly talk to your employees. You're going to tell them exactly how you feel. So I think if you're always dealing with people that receive messages differently and give off messages differently. So it's just a challenge as a leader to like sort through all that and try to, I guess, kind of lead specifically to each person. Yeah.
Like Andy was saying, with the differences between high and low context cultures, um, I was uh, a follower for somebody who is really high context culture. They're very open and flexible, and a few of my coworkers were from like a low tech context culture, and I remember my leader having a really hard time trying to figure out a way to lead um, both groups, because it was very mixed, and it was really hard for the low context culture coworkers to try to grasp what she was saying. And it was the communication there really needed she needed to figure out a way how to adapt to both. She couldn't just lead with the way that she knew how to lead. She had to really adapt to that change.
Good job, guys. We've hit our time limit if we want to wrap it up, but good job covering both topics.